Hey friends, so it has been 5 years since Flowtoys dropped the Podpoi on the flow arts world, and it has never been the same since. A couple months ago, Flowtoys dropped their first major update to this product since it was first released, and man is it a doozy. Drex here from DrexFactor.com, and today I'm going to give you my full and unvarnished review of Capsules 2.0. I'm going to roll down features, ease of use, price, durability, brightness, and include some of my own thoughts on the matter too. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know exactly when I'm dropping my next video. Before we dive in, I just want to take a moment to give a shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Darkmonk, Emazing Lights, Flowtoys, Spinballs, and Ultrapoi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can visit them all by following the links down in the description of this video. So I think it's safe to say that the introduction of Podpoi 5 years ago was one of those watershed moments in the history of the flow arts. Now, Podpoi were hardly the first poi on the market, but what they did do was combine together ease of use, durability, features, and above all, they were incredibly flexible. Whether you were just starting off poi or had been doing it for years on end, they were a great fit for whatever you were doing. Over the years, they've kind of become the de facto LED poi for more or less the entire flow arts world. Now, that does create kind of a challenge, because once you've created such a ubiquitous product, how exactly do you follow that up? So first up, this is actually an update to the capsules inside of the Podpoi. The actual form factor of the Podpoi themselves hasn't really changed, and it's easy to see why. This is a really elegant design. It's really soft and it's really effective. So the question then becomes, how do you improve on the electronics? Well, buckle up. Features. So I'm just going to start off by saying it's kind of absurd how many features they've crammed into these little capsules here. The programming interface is now vastly more complicated than it was when they first introduced their Podpoi. Among the updates that they've done is they've created something called pages, that is, banks of modes that you can access through different combinations of button presses. For those of us who are really familiar with the first version of the Podpoi, all the modes that you know and love are actually contained within that first page. But there's an additional 2 pages worth of modes, as well as an entire page that is reserved just for custom modes that you come up with yourself. You'll also find that the last mode in any given page is actually a shuffle mode that shifts you through all of the different modes within that page. And there's a 5th mode that controls all the settings for the capsule. You can do things like control the brightness, as well as how long each mode lasts when you're on shuffle. And finally, what is probably the single biggest feature of the new capsules, grouping. See, the capsules are able to communicate with each other wirelessly now. So for example, I can turn on one capsule and it turns on the other. I can also change modes, or turn my capsules off, and they'll both communicate automatically on how they do that. It's crazy. So this is kind of ridiculous, but honestly, the thing I use the grouping feature for most often is just turning on both sets of poi at the same time with one button press and switching around the modes and everything. It's really just me being lazy, but it's so convenient that it's impossible not to use it this way. So it does stand to ask, with all these new features then, how easy are they to use? Ease of use. So the short answer to this one is that they're both really easy and also really hard. So let me unpack that here. So straight out of the package, you can easily turn these on and shift modes, no problem. They're very intuitive, and you can probably find something that you're gonna like with minimal effort. Now that said, if you wanna get deeper into it, if you wanna start editing modes, if you want to start using the grouping function, changing brightness and everything, then it gets complicated, and it gets complicated quick. So straight up, I've had these now for months, and I'm nowhere near off book. I constantly make small mistakes that lead to accidentally not saving settings or not putting things in the proper groups and everything, and sometimes it's hard to track where I went wrong. Now don't get me wrong, the documentation is good, but the problem here is that I think we're really reaching the limits on what we can effectively do with just a single button for an interface. I also just want to take 1 second to talk about the process of updating these. In order to update these, you actually have to download firmware through the USB port, which in and of itself is not terrible, but then to actually have the firmware set in, you have to crack open the capsule and bridge a gap between 2 leads in here. Now normally I'd say no big deal, except for the fact that the Podpoi that I'm currently using have these fatty flow cords in them, and the fatty flow cords are actually really hard to get on through the retaining ring at the top of the pod. This means that when I want to update my firmware, I actually have to disassemble these, and it takes me quite a while to put them back together. This might be just a me problem rather than an everybody problem, because I'm sure that most people still have the thinner flow cord in their poi, but it is kind of annoying, and I wish there was a way that you could do the reset without having to open up the capsule to do it. Durability. Okay, so let's call a spade a spade. I have been using my Podpoi for over 5 years, and I have never had to replace them. They're not exactly bulletproof, but man, Flowtoys really engineered a reliable product here. Unless something goes tragically amiss on the new versions of the capsules, which You know, it's always possible, but I find it very hard to believe it'll happen. My guess is you're gonna have your Capsules 2.0 for a very long time as well. Brightness. So one of the big criticisms of the old capsules was that they weren't bright enough. And, well, be careful what you wish for. So the new capsules have 5 different modes of brightness, and to my eyes, mode 2 is about the closest equivalent to the brightness of the old capsules, right? Okay, so here's what mode 5 looks like in broad daylight. That's pretty bloody bright. And when you're spinning this at night, there's basically nothing else you can see other than this. I shot some video a few months ago to compare the brightness levels on these, and what I discovered is, especially if you're shooting video to collect trails, basically once you get past brightness level 3 or 4, you don't do much more than just blow out the sensor. I have no way to formally measure these, but I'm going to say that these are probably the single brightest set of poi that I've ever spun. Battery life. So with the added brightness, as well as the wireless communication between capsules, what impact does it have on the battery life? So from what I can tell, the wireless transmissions have a negligible effect on the battery. If there is any kind of effect, you'll never notice it. As for brightness, I have my standard test where I see how long a set of poi lasts if I put it into white mode and make it as bright as possible. I do this because it's the most punishing thing that you can possibly do to the battery. And with these, I'm able to keep them on brightness level 5 for 2 hours before they run out of battery. Which is really impressive because last year when I did my test of capsule handles for my LED handles test, I got about 3.5 hours of battery life out of full white mode. So that means that despite the increased brightness, there's not that huge an effect on battery life, which is super impressive. Price. A brand new set of Podpoi with Capsules 2.0 inside of them retail for $119.95. If you just want to buy a single capsule, they're available for $45 at flowtoys.com. And if you head over there, please use the code DREXFACTOR with a 0 instead of an O to let them know that I sent you. It also helps out the channel. Okay, so overall thoughts. These are a huge upgrade in the electronics from the original capsules. I can see why it took them years to get here because they've really packed a lot of value into a small package. One of the things that I absolutely adored about the original capsules is how incredibly intuitive and easy to use they were. It's one of those reasons why Podpoi were such a great fit even for beginners. Now, we're starting to run up against a wall in terms of ease of use versus the amount of features that get packed into these. And granted, I think that more features is always a good thing. But I'm also going to say that in the future, we should be looking to have something to simplify the interface of using them if that's going to be the case. The grouping feature is freaking awesome, and I can't wait to go to more events where a lot of people can all be on the same page, and we can have somebody like a DJ change the modes according to what's going on with the music. And the brightness on these is crazy. There's actually a part of me that's hoping that nobody tries to outdo them on this, because I have a hard time imagining a brighter LED that doesn't in some way, shape, or form damage your vision. So overall, I really dig the new capsules. I think that they're a great expansion on the feature set from the originals. And quite frankly, they nailed it with the form factor of the original Podpoi. Don't fix what's not broken. Thanks to Flowtoys for sending me a beta set of these to play with, and thanks to all of you guys for watching. Before I send you guys loose, I would just like to send out a massive thank you to all of my awesome supporters on Patreon. You guys are the reason that I'm able to make these videos, so thank you. If you dug this video, please subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos like it in the future by clicking up here. Over here are some other videos that you may enjoy, including a playlist of videos that are just like the one that you just watched. Finally, if you like my work and would like to support it on Patreon, you can do so by clicking down here. Thanks so much, and have a good one. Peace.